In a video that is going viral, we see a young woman being arrested for what looks like the first time in her life. And because of this, she seems to be having some kind of panic attack where she huffs and puffs and she's freaking out, hyperventilating. She is a Black Lives Matter activist who appears to be arrested for violating curfew amid the ongoing riots. Now, I want to say this. I mean no disrespect to this young woman. I think we as adults and as experienced individuals need to recognize that young people don't get it. You know, when I see a toddler fall over, bump their leg and cry, you know, sometimes people want to laugh at this, but no, look, man, it's a learning experience for all of us. We're all young. We all grow up. We all experience stuff for the first time. And so I see this video and I laugh and I roll my eyes, but I'm not laughing because I have disrespect for this young woman and her friends, though they do say some outrageously dumb things while they're getting arrested. And that's what we're going to focus on. I'm glad they got to experience the real world for once. Now, here's what I tweeted. Funny how quickly these children buckle when they get held accountable. Civil disobedience involves getting arrested. I can only assume this is the first time someone actually disciplined them. I didn't want to post this to make fun of this individual. And I'm not one to actually, very, very rarely do I make videos about random user accounts and even viral videos like this. But this is very important for us to talk about right now based on what we're seeing. This young woman clearly has no idea what's going on. Yet she is going out and protesting and acting like she's deserving of something, like things are supposed to be done in a certain way. And it reminds me of, being young and dumb. The problem is these people are providing cover or they're engaging in what amounts to an avalanche. In the long run, we have now seen horrifying stories. Police have lost their lives, 13 plus dead throughout all of this rioting. So the worst that could happen is you engage in civil disobedience, you get arrested. That's about it. Well, this video is going viral for two reasons. It's got over 1 million views already. Among the right, it's typically people making fun of them for being dumb, which I actually don't like. I don't. Look, I get it. They're entitled, privileged, whiny children who are complaining about like the gentlest arrest ever. And we'll read some comments. But you know what? It's their first protest, probably. They don't know much. When they get older, they'll better understand. And I can respect that. And it's worth calling out respectfully. I will call out and I will deride the things they say and speak down to them because that's the point of older people explaining the world to younger people. I got to admit, it is funny. I think a lot of people get a kind of emotional release seeing these leftist activists freak out and panic over nonsense. But for me, it's funny because it's like watching young kids. It's like watching a toddler, fall down for the first time. And then they're all confused, like, wow, that hurt. It's like watching a kid grow up. It's like, yep, man, welcome to the real world, buddy. Hopefully now you learn your lesson. What's funny about this, and I'll play the clip, and I'll read you her Twitter thread, is how the problem is, as much as I can say, it's good that she's getting a real world experience for once. The problem is other people on Twitter reinforce the delusion that she was right all along. They say, oh no, this is police brutality. We're talking about a protest because a man died, and you were gently placed in plastic cuffs and sat down for violating curfew. I'm sure you're going to get a disorderly charge or some other nonsense charge, and that will be the end of it. Civil disobedience involves getting arrested. Freedom of assembly peaceably does not mean freedom from consequence, as they say, right? I'm joking, by the way. The point I bring up, I have said over and over again, for one, peaceful assembly, First Amendment. 2, when you engage in disruptive civil disobedience, you will be arrested. Activists used to call that a badge of honor. I know, I worked for Greenpeace and they told us that if you engage in any kind of action with the company or whatever, we view those arrests as badges of honor. But they're peaceful arrests. They sit down in a street, a cop walks up and does this, picks you up, puts you in cuffs, and that's it. And you say, okay, you can spend the night in jail, you get out the next day, and we're done with it. The cops know it's a procedural thing to get you out of the street. You know that by taking this action, you risk arrest. But these people, man, the problem is they're not going to learn, and that's what scares me. So let me show you this, and then I want to read you what they're saying about it. So here's the video. Let me play it for you.
Keep scooting back for me, man.
Go ahead and stand up for me, miss.
These Nazis are tormenting our children. Hey, these Nazis are tormenting America's children.
It's okay. It's going to be okay.
Where are the adults? Where are our veterans? Here are our leaders.
Sir, she's having a
Our
She's
leaders.
gonna
Our
have
politicians.
Not getting arrested for panic attack.
What are
No,
they
but
doing
she's
right
having
now?
one.
Well,
Hey,
take
guys.
and
Are we being
drugs,
arrested?
brutalize our kids. They aren't letting this young woman have her dialysis.
She's my sister. I need to calm her down. She's having a panic attack.
They're not letting this young woman have her dialysis.
Sir.
These fascist kids
Sir.
are putting the lives of children at risk.
Keep scooting back.
Wow. These fascists aren't letting her have her dialysis. What? These people have no idea what they're talking about. So let me. All right. There's a video of some dude who got hit in the leg with a rubber bullet, and he's got an abrasion, a minor flesh wound of some sort, very minor. Looks like it scraped the skin, and he was bleeding. The activists apply a tourniquet with full pressure to his leg just above the wound, and there's so much wrong with this. I want to scream. These are kids who have no discipline, no training, no experience, and are imitating movies. They have no idea what's going on. That's the problem with social media, is that this is all being reinforced. When she posts, instead of having adults say, listen, here's what really happens, she gets reinforcement from creepy weirdos saying things like, oh no, oh, that's so wrong, that's so wrong. Here's what she wrote. I was arrested for peacefully protesting for the BLM movement in Cincinnati. Cops forced me to stand while hyperventilating and actively passing out. No, you weren't. You didn't pass out. And then laughed at me while I was having a panic attack. They withheld my sister's meds and mocked her intelligence while she begged. I would like to explain to you why they mocked her intelligence while she begged. You see, somebody liked to point out to me that, so here's the first video. This is from Rational Disconnect. You may be familiar because I've talked to him in the past. He says, hey, cool story, Tim. In the moments leading up to their arrest, their sister was begging the police to give her insulin, and they laughed in her face. So I don't know, maybe that led to them having a panic attack. First of all, the woman being arrested is not the one who is diabetic. It's her sister who is asking for her insulin. Second of all, the woman who was asking for her insulin straight up said, my blood sugar is getting low or something to that effect, and she needed insulin. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm not an expert on diabetes or anything, but my general understanding, and maybe this for the cop as well, is that if your blood sugar is getting low and you take insulin, you could die or go into a coma. That's my understanding. I could be wrong about that, so I don't want to pretend to be a doctor on this one. But what I can tell you is that cop's probably like, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like you need a candy, like you need a sugar, you need something to drink. If your blood sugar is getting low. No, the insulin's for when it's going too high, right? Clearly they're lying, and the cops know this. The dude then shouts, she needs her dialysis. You have any idea how big a dialysis machine is? They don't got a dialysis machine in the trunk of their car. So the cop knows they're lying. Their kids complaining and crying and whining, and that's why he's laughing. He's laughing because nothing is happening. The worst things these kids experience, are you kidding me? They get gently cuffed and sat down while they huff and puff and hyperventilate. Yeah, man, we've all dealt with children, and they've been and they've had to have been disciplined. So here's what she writes. My sister begged police to let her have her medicine bag. She had to beg to check her blood sugar and ask for help while she was dropping. She reached over to hold me while I lost consciousness, and police pulled each away and held me up by the shoulders. They forced me to walk. Why is anyone entertaining this? Dude, you want to come to me and you want to say this man lost his life because the cops killed him? I'm like, dude, that's messed up. You want to come at me and be like, they made me sit down on the ground. I'm going to be like, yo, grow up. Man, I look at this and it's just, is this what we get? You know, suddenly I'm not so worried about a civil war, I suppose. It's a bunch of kids LARPing. No, I really do think there's a threat of civil war because there are lunatics who are older and still lunatics and naive. But I'll tell you what, man, I was in Egypt during the second revolution, the removal of Morsi from power. It's a very, very complex situation in that country. And I can't tell you I watched somebody die. And I was in a vehicle where they were transporting high-powered automatic weapons and stuff. And it was like, man, we were doing this crazy story. It was crazy. We were in the middle of a revolution. Groups went out with these makeshift shotguns. Somebody took a blast in some capacity, and then they dragged away the corpse. That's stuff I've seen, right? Because that's how the real world really is. These kids are used to watching movies and playing video games, and they've never actually experienced the real world. Because of this, the first time in their lives when they're not treated like snowflakes, they freak out and they hyperventilate. She said 3, they held up my elbows and dragged me to the bus, claiming there would be a medic at the place of processing. I was cuffed with tight zip ties for 3 hours on a bus because before I was processed in a underground tunnel, sick, with the hundreds of other people rounded up. There was no medic. That just means I'm referencing her mistake. It's an underground tunnel. I was one of the last to be processed. They processed my sister and friend way before me and sent them out into the city. They weren't allowed to wait with me. We weren't able to use our phones while waiting. We didn't receive a phone call. My sister wasn't able to reach out. I love it. You know, the phone call thing's a myth, right? Everybody thinks, I want my phone call. It reminds me of The Dark Knight when they arrest the Joker. And he sits down and they're like, what do you want? And he goes, I want my phone call. Your phone call. You don't get a phone call. That's not real life. If they're nice to you, they'll let you get a phone call. Now you can contact your lawyer and you can ask them to contact your lawyer. But it is a myth, at least in Illinois where I'm from, you don't get a phone call. And a lot of people, they do this thing where they're getting arrested and it's like, it's mind numbing. These people have no idea how the world works. And it's scary when you realize they're trying to change policy. It's just a bunch of morons. They yell things like, I have not been read my rights. They are not reading me my rights. And do you know what it means to be Mirandized, dude? No, they don't need to read you your rights because they're not investigating you. They saw you break the law and they're asserting of their own will under arguably oath when they're supposed to. Well, I don't know to what extent the police reports are filed. It's supposed to be truthful. They're asserting they witnessed the crime. The evidence is them as the witness. Now, maybe that should be challenged. I'm not a big fan of a cop being like, I saw you do it, you're under arrest. Okay, fine. But in a court of law, everyone just believes the cops. That's not cool. But they're not going to read you your rights. And so she's shocked. We didn't receive a phone call. Oh, is that how that works? It's not. You watch too many movies, dude. She probably got it from Batman. She said, what did she say? My sister wasn't able to reach out to my mom until after my friend got processed. She was a young 18-year-old and was kicked out into the streets with no phone battery. She was offered crack while waiting for me or my sister to come out. None of us knew where the others were. My zip ties were tied so tight to my hands. My hands were white. Now, that's not cool. And I believe her. I do. Because zip ties can cut off circulation and cause nerve damage, particularly in the thumbs. Not a fan of that. I do not believe, I believe police need to be very, very careful about putting them on. They need to be put just tight enough. Just tight enough. So that I can respect 100%. I'm being fair, right? But you're going to try and complain. I mean, I'm going to say it's a little low-key racist about the crack statement. She was offered crack. What? Why? Where were you? What are you trying to say about that? These kids, these privileged white suburban kids who have never experienced real hardship. You're worried that, you know what really bugs me about this? You're complaining that someone offered you drugs. Bro, so what you mean to say is that somebody was trying to offer up a free transfer of goods? Someone tried selling me something that was illicit. And well, what is it supposed to mean? I grew up on the south side of Chicago, man. You walk down the street and you get offered all sorts of garbage. And the funny thing about it is, dude, if they're trying to sell you something, they're not threatening you. Like, what are you freaking out about? That's why I always think it's funny when people complain about drug dealers in certain areas, like as if it's like a threat of violence or whatever. And I'm like, no, listen. I'm not a big fan of drug dealers and all that stuff. No way, man, especially not in my neighborhood. I am fairly libertarian, though, and think we should have this stuff regulated and for sale, depending, within reason. So we should definitely reassess the things that are being sold and being made illegal. But like, if someone's politely like trying to offer you the sale of goods, what are you freaking out about? You know what I mean? It's not like they came up to you and said, give me your crack. They were like, would you like to purchase my wares? And it just so happens they're off. So look, I get it. It's a nasty thing to sell for sure. But what are you trying to, what's your point? That you finally got to see what street life is like? Yeah. Here's what she says. I have bruises around my wrists. Cincinnati police arrested as many protesters. We didn't leave the city until 2 a.m. Well, there is a curfew in effect. I don't like curfew. I think those curfews are wrong. I also think, however, if you protest them and you're standing up against the machine, expect to be arrested. And poor you, 8 hours later, they let you go. Not a fan of curfews. Not a fan of any of the lockdowns. I think they violate the First Amendment. There's arguments about national security and things like that. I think the police should not have arrested her or these other people. But I went to her TikTok and she says that they pulled her out of her car when they were trying to leave. No, dude, you were running from the cops. Listen, I don't think she should have been arrested in the first place. I think a lot of these people shouldn't, but the police are trying to deter things. I don't like that idea. Hey, man, I don't know what those solutions are, though. I don't like the idea that they're going to be like, well, we'll arrest you so it deters you from doing it again. Well, it didn't. She's going to go back out. But I do think it's fair to point out, if you are out somewhere you know you're not supposed to be, or you know that the police are challenging you, and you want to challenge them, I can respect the civil disobedience. The police say curfew, you say F you. I get it. Totally agree, civil disobedience. But you will be arrested. And this is part of the fight, the legal process. Then you go to court, you challenge the law, and guess what? You win. Sometimes you lose. But that's how it plays out. The worst case scenario is no one's going to throw you in a gulag because you did this. The judge is going to be like, they're going to say dismissed. They're going to say pay a $50 fine or some ridiculous nonsense. It's very, very low, a slap on the wrist if you lose this one. It's not the end of the world. Congratulations on experiencing the real world. I wish more kids got to experience this. The problem, though, is the responses. She says Cincinnati in the next few days. She's going back to Cincinnati in the next few days, take part in the protest again. Police will not silence me, and their treatment of me will not be forgotten in vain. What? Wait, what? That doesn't make sense. No justice, no peace. I don't think these activists realize what people hear when they yell no justice, no peace. Now, I understand the context. They're trying to say, if there is no justice, there is no peace. But when you engage in mass violence and rioting and straight up say no justice, no peace, you are telling people there will be no justice and there will be no peace. You can't assume that people understand the context of your statements. They do not. Take a look at this. Someone said, give me a break with this. Everything is hyper dramatic and play acting these days. Much respect. But ACAB BLM says, how can anyone watch this and not declare this an act of state-sponsored domestic terror? To protect and serve? Where? He literally is trying to kill her. Ah! Wow, man. You know what, my friends, I'm going to move out to the middle of nowhere. I'm going to get a farm. I'm going to have my own cows and chickens, and y'all can have it. You can have all of this. I don't want to. Literally trying to kill her. The man gently placed her in cuffs. That's it. That's the story. Man, do I love it. It's, you know what? There's another video. I can't really show it because this is YouTube, but there's two guys and they're like playing beer pong or whatever, two white dudes. And the guy starts filming and looks out the window and he sees a bunch of protesters. I'll call them rioters, actually, walking past, and he gives them a thumbs up. You may have seen the video. Ami Horowitz tweeted it out. And then he's like, yeah. And he like bangs on the window and gives them a thumbs up. And then all of a sudden rocks come flying through their windows. And they're like, what are you doing? We're on your side. We're on your side, he yells to the people who just smashed his window. You people are, these people, you know what, man? They have no idea what comes next. They don't. They really, really don't. Some lunatics showed up to Cassandra Fairbanks' house. And I know I brought it up several times the past few days, but it needs to be brought up. You want to talk about being someone trying to kill you, my friend Hannah? Let me first say, I'm sorry, and I don't like the idea that people are coming hard at her with severe insults and derision. But to an extent, some of it is fair and warranted. When you're a child experiencing the world for the first time, and you finally realize what things are really like, older people laugh at you. And you know what? It was really frustrating to me growing up. It's like, bro, how do you expect me to know these things? I don't know this. I've never done this. Like I'm entering the world. So she's, I think she's, I guess 18, people have said something like that. And so it's her first foray into real life. And now because, it's social media really is this awful, awful thing. I don't like making videos where I target single out people like this, but listen, she's got 1 million views and people are saying that they're trying to kill her. So no, this needs to be shut down immediately. But you know what, man? You want to complain about them literally trying to kill you. Let me tell you about people showing up to Cassandra Fairbanks' house where she was with her daughter and they fired guns and fireworks at her building. This is someone trying to kill you. I'm sorry the officer was mean to you and the cuffs were too tight. I don't think the cuffs should have been tight at all. And I think it's a serious problem. I've seen people get serious damage to their hands. And that can be really bad if you need your hands. So I'm down. I'm down for police reform, especially after hearing the other day that Black Lives Matter dude Hank Newsom wants local community patrol in the black neighborhood armed. And I'm like, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe now we can defund the police, not completely, but enough so to where we tell these communities, you must defend yourselves. I don't know. It sounds like a win-win. The Second Amendment gets bolstered. People in these communities and cities are responsible for the crime in their own neighborhoods. And then guess what happens? If your neighborhood watch shoots an armed intruder and it's an unarmed black man or whatever, that's something your community will have to deal with. And the police come in if it can't be solved. But I think that may actually solve a lot of these problems. So it's a really interesting idea. Now, I'm reticent to say, to go gung-ho on any of these things because of unforeseen potentials. And that's why I tend to be a rather milquetoast fence sitter, as it were. But I like the idea that maybe we police our own communities and that's our responsibility. And the people should have a right to defend their own communities and arm themselves. Maybe this will see the Second Amendment become stronger, gun control measures be relaxed in a way that these liberals and Black Lives Matter activists actually want. And then you'll see Black Lives Matter activists defending their own communities, and they don't have to worry about racial injustice or systemic racism from police departments because they are in control of policing their communities. Now, listen, that means if someone from one neighborhood goes to another, it's your responsibility in your neighborhood to protect your neighborhood from outside forces. And that's when we can see police involvement and things like that. It's an interesting idea. There's a lot of pitfalls I can't see. That's why I'm not pretending like it's the best idea. It's just something interesting that came up. I'll leave it there, though. Stick around. The next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.